Hello.
Hey, hello, Angela. How are you doing?
All
Um,
right.
yeah, I hear you've not been so well today.
Now, other
No.
than vertigo and balance issues and other things, I just didn't want to take the risk and go and try to walk on flat or unflat surfaces and
Hmm.
risk falling or getting sick.
Well, we got some unflat surfaces in the car park here, as you well know,
Yes, exactly.
right? Okay. Not that you would necessarily, hey, you wouldn't necessarily sue them, but still. Okay,
Yeah.
so welcome to the show. Welcome to Spin Legal. And if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so at 905-688-5598. Angela's email is angela@weareinvictus.legal, and mine is peter@weareinvictus.legal. And our website, of course, is weareinvictus.legal. Okay, so we are talking about an interesting subject today. And I was actually looking at this because I I saw an article recently about a person who was suing the police because in America because they'd been arrested because they played the Darth Vader theme music. Right.
Oh,
Personally, I don't remember what the Darth Vader theme music was, but hey, it's taunting the police with Darth Vader music doesn't exactly, it's like, well, get over yourself, police force.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like, doesn't a person have a freedom of expression?
yeah, exactly, and more so in America than pretty well anywhere else on the
Hmm.
planet. We might be living in a Trump era, but hey, um, it did occur to me on the other side of this that there are some cases whereby people might do, and I'm not making any accusations about the gentleman involved. But hey, there are some cases, as we well know, where people go, "Oh, I'm going to sue, and now I'm going to do nothing for the rest of my life because I'm going to get a $15 million payout." Yeah,
Hmm.
right
Yeah, they
now.
sue. You mean by people who sue for a living?
Yeah, sue for a living, or what I've called here the litigation lottery. So
Yeah,
using
or filing
laws,
for dollars, which is the
yeah,
common thing I use.
filing for dollars, exactly that. But the term out there that seems to be most common is the litigation lottery. And what that basically means is defined as cases where there's a low entry cost and a potential for a large payout. One of them, one of them typically, I guess, might well be the use of class action lawsuits. So there's a class action lawsuit, and they're suing for, however many $1 million, and there's however many people in the class. You've got to prove that you're in the class, but once you're in the class, you can actually potentially say get money from that class action lawsuit. I found out about a class that I was supposedly in well after all the stuff closed. I was looking up for some class action lawsuits for somebody, for a client, because I was trying to find out whether they qualified for one that was out there. And I coincidentally found one that matched the condition that I had 15 years ago.
Hmm. Wow.
Um, Too late, and
I gotta look those up to see if I can start cashing in.
yeah, yeah, but we know there are people out there that are that are kind of looking out for these things. Oh, I'm a member of that class, or maybe I can prove I'm a member of that class, particularly if you're 14th generation indigenous, right?
Oh, yes.
Right? Or something
Or
of
they
that
could
nature,
just kind of
right?
say, where, well, now there's one going around where they're encouraging people who have been smoking regularly up like before 1998 and who have since developed cancer,
Well,
COPD, emphysema,
that's
different types of things as a result of smoking, that they can collect a large settlement.
Well, that's actually, funnily enough, you should be there. In the US, of course, this is the one that made history. Cigarette smoking cancer product liability cases have resulted in large awards.
Yeah.
But this, and in some of the cases, they like against who was the company against
Philip Morris, probably.
yeah well, Philip Morris,
Benson and Hedges.
Legit Group, Reynolds, R.J. Reynolds Tobacco, and Philip Morris was the other one, right? So there's a
And Benson and
number of
Hedges is another one.
these class action lawsuits that seemingly at the time back in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s won those people millions of dollars. However, let's put an asterisk in that one, because in fact they have since gone back to appeal, and the millions of dollars that potentially were payouts never actually happened. So people like Philip Morris got their litigation lawyers out there and said, dial the money back. And in many cases, the Supreme Court did dial the money back. And besides which, when you're outside of the United States, there's very few common law countries that actually follow those principles. We here in Canada actually have class action lawsuits, but you're not going to get rich off a class action lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. They'll
Right?
compensate you. You'll get good compensation, but you won't be like a multimillionaire.
Yeah, and the one that I was looking up, the timing had run out on it. It was about $17,000.
Oh, that's about
Right?
$17,000 you went without, Peter.
Yeah. Well,
You
yeah.
should sue them for $17,000 because they didn't let you know.
Yeah, but again, it's up to the member of the class to actually keep an eye on the action of the class going on, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm
Right?
keeping an eye out on a few things because, just to see, because we get clients who come in with different things and just
Yeah.
to see if they
Yeah.
might be a member of a class for certain things.
Well, and for example, there are some class action suits that are going on. One of them against an HVAC company, another of which against a finance company that financed an HVAC company.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Right. We both know who those are.
Oh,
We can't
yes.
say, right? But the point being is there are some lawyers here in Canada that in Ontario that are actually pursuing these claims. We'd be happy to to set you up with
Mm-hmm.
forward you to them if you want. But again, one of the things is don't think you're going to get rich out of this, because you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And essentially, you're talking about a company that has sued for bankruptcy, a finance company that is probably out of pocket by millions of dollars from the first company, the HVAC company. And what's the chances you're going to get anything?
Mm-hmm.
You're dividing the assets that they have captured from the company at the time when they started the lawsuit, and whoever put a cease and desist on it. That's about it. You're going to get a 100th share of that, if that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's more, the chances of getting it is low here in Canada. However, that said, the Supreme Court has repeatedly stressed here in Canada that damages are compensatory and not windfall generating, and that punitive damages must remain exceptional. So in all cases that you've got, and this has been decided by the case of Andrews versus Grandin Toy Alberta Limited. This dates back from 1978, and as you can see from the SCC on this, it
Yeah.
is Supreme Court of Canada. So this is the law of the land, and this is the standard by which you have to live up to. And this has been followed in the case of Whitnam Pilot Insurance Limited, a company, in 2002. So it's still the standard today.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, Witten and Pilot Insurance, where insurance companies have to be very, very careful too in terms of how they decline cases and
Yeah,
decline claims.
yeah. Well,
They actually accused a person of committing arson
yeah,
on property when it wasn't arson.
yeah, and
And
that
then
can be problematic. That's
then he
certainly,
proved it that he
yeah,
was didn't do arson, and then they had to go back and there were consequences for it. But that went back and forth till it went up to the Supreme Court.
yeah. So that was Witten, was it?
Hmm.
Okay, thank you. I'm much more interested in the Grand Toy one because that basically said way back in 1978, it really basically put the nail in the coffin of the US type uh, cases like Philip Morris and Williams and Philip Morris. That were really expanding out the amounts of awards of damages that were going
Hmm.
to be in the US. And there was always a fear by the common law courts in UK, Canada, Australia, South Africa, etc., that that was going to become commonplace
Hmm.
in the rest of the common law jurisdictions.
Well,
But
the states has been putting on tort
yeah,
reform, so they can't get all these fancy, huge compensation awards.
yeah, and in fact, whilst the US does still do fairly large compensation awards, it essentially there was a situation when I was doing my bar course in England. One of what happens if you were doing if you're doing anything to do with tort, so personal injury claims, where the biggest claims are happen where you are injured for the rest of your life. You can no longer work. So the claim is say so if you're unemployed at the time when the accident occurred, they assume you're unemployable for the rest of your life, and so your salary, your employment, your monetary expectations are based upon the unemployment rate,
Yep.
and they will set that out for, let's say, 30 years. If you're 21 and unemployed, you'll set it out for 30 years, which, hey, I know isn't the time at which you retire. But what will happen is they will build a lump sum, and the court will basically award a lump sum. So the cost of an arm is X, the cost of a leg is Y, the cost of an eye is Z, etc., etc. Nose is something
Hmm.
else. There's a cost for all of the things. Brain damage gives you an award of X, right? So there's
Hmm.
values in all of the injuries that you could suffer. And there are test cases in the UK that they tend to update every 10 to 15 years.
Hmm.
So, and what they tend
There's
to
also
do,
a cap on pain and suffering in Canada.
yeah, yeah. So here there's different rules. Those rules don't apply here in Canada because there aren't standard cases that the case will apply to everything to personal circumstances here in Canada, as I understand it.
Yeah, yeah, because they have a cap on personal injury damages, and there's other damages that you could have, like say a million, couple million for, but this is like for care. Like if you
But
need to get new housing or you need to have a caregiver,
yeah,
things like that, hey, they will cover that. But that's usually through a structured
well,
settlement arrangement.
exactly, and that's the whole point about
And we've
this.
met people who have
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. The point about this exactly is that you have what's called a structured settlement, and you're not going to be enriched. And basically, the structured settlement is intended, for example, if you're a child and you're disabled and you can't walk, you can't think, you can't whatever, they determine from the basis of medical evidence what your life longevity, what your lifespan is likely to be.
Hmm.
They will put out a structured settlement such that you can buy a house, that you can actually, or somebody can buy a house for you. you can have the house converted to be wheelchair friendly, so all around is wheelchair friendly, and they can put all of this together so that you have that as part of your structured settlement.
Yeah.
Right, and there's so many dollars available every year from the structured settlement released to you or your caregivers for life.
Yep. And it's very interesting how that is, because one of the persons who had that, I remember speaking with her about it, and it's interesting. They get so much to live on, like for their own use. Plus, they have some money that they can pay staff, like in the house. So if they're not able to cook, or they're not able to clean their house, or they're not able to bathe themselves, they have someone that can do that for them, and they can pay them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but in fact, actually, so we've been talking realistically about what we call the litigation lottery, and the classic of that, was, as I said, was the tobacco cases of the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. And realistically, if you suffered, if you got cancer in the late 80s and 90s and 2000s, etc., kind of, so what? Nobody cares. The courts don't care. You're not going to get any big awards like those original tobacco cases, because it's well known that cigarettes cause cancer, and cancer causes death.
I used to tell people, I said, hey, cigarettes cause cancer, help yourself.
Yeah. So
here, smoke.
And both in the United States and in Canada, those liability awards, those product liability awards, have gone down because the point being is that back in the 60s, they didn't discover that nicotine was bad until until the mid 50s sometime. I think it was 1953, but I could be wrong. And the point being is that the cigarette companies kept it secret until the 60s and 70s. So by the time you were in the 70s, you could have been smoking for 20 years when the cigarette companies knew that nicotine was bad for you.
Yeah, and they also knew it was addictive.
Yeah, and it was addictive,
which was a very thing, because I hear from people who are smokers that that is worse quitting than quitting heroin.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because it's pretty serious. Right. And I know some people who've actually tried to quit smoking, and it was very difficult. Yeah.
Okay. And the point being about a lot of these, there are still issues around. They basically produce verdicts and settlements, but many of the headline numbers, as I said, were later reduced or reversed or heavily constrained by appellate reviews through the US court. And pretty well anywhere outside of the US, maybe with, I think, some exceptions in, there were some pretty big awards in both, I think, Canada and the UK in relation to cigarettes, the use of cigarettes, but I don't think they were ever anywhere near as big as even the constrained appellate type awards that were given.
Yeah, there's one that finally settled in Canada that people who have been smoking prior to 1998 and who have later developed cancer or COPD, any serious health issues as a result, they can apply, but they're not going to be a multimillionaire.
No.
Okay? But there will be compensation.
They will have health support. They may have.
At some point, they didn't tell people it was dangerous. Like they had commercials where obstetricians were smoking when taking care of pregnant women.
Yeah.
Okay? And people didn't think it was a problem.
Anyway, so what we said is Canada awards what's called compensatory damage for proven loss. So there's the key word, proven.
Yes.
Right. That said, however,
you can't sue for nothing.
Yeah. However, that doesn't stop some people from kind of, I think, going into the litigation lottery, even in Canada, where we are a lot hotter on prove your case.
Yep. And we also award costs against
I've seen a
parties
few.
that file silly
Yeah.
lawsuits.
Well, I've seen a few in the LTB where I'm sitting there waiting for my hearing to come up. I'm scratching my head, like, thinking to myself, why on earth is this case being heard? Because it's a bullshit case. I think it's just a tenant diving for dollars.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
Filing for dollars costs them a good $48 so that they can file a case at the landlord tenant board. And except the problem is proof. The proof is always in the pudding.
Well, that actually is one of the key factors. I can remember more than one case where the person is saying, yes, Mr. Jones, where's the proof of this? And you can see what the landlord's given as evidence. I want to hear your proof.
Mm-hmm.
Did you put any documentation up? No, I'm just, take my word for it.
Yeah, take my word. Yes, because he did me. Oh, he committed a tort.
Yeah. And that may well be the case. He may well have wronged you,
Yeah.
right? But I've never been able to win a case. I've had some people who've been badly wronged, who have got a big fat zero from something like the Landlord and Tenant Board, and know those cases to have been, I personally fought hard for those people, and they got a big fat zero, right?
Yeah, because some of them are hard to prove.
Yeah, exactly. Because even though I put a lot of proof and evidence into there, I got one where we were claiming somewhere in the region of $17,000, and it was all documented. Right? I got $678.
Yeah, that gets horrible.
Yeah,
And it hurts us too. We just, because we have a lot of hope for our clients.
yeah.
When you do that, but unfortunately, we don't have control over everything when we go into a court or a forum.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of factors that play into that.
Yeah, absolutely there are. One of the things that needs to be noted here in Canada is that there is a cap on non-pecuniary damages. So if you've got damages that you can prove financially, you're likely to get them refunded. Right? For example, going back to the landlord and tenant situation. So you replace the sink in the apartment because it was consistent. Well, in fact, not only was it dripping for the first 15 years of your being there, it fell apart. It broke on year 16, and you had to replace it because you sent a letter every week for 15 weeks to the landlord, and he did nothing. He said, yeah, if you want it fixed, you do it yourself. So you did it yourself, right? So and there have been situations whereby people have put those receipts up to the board, and the receipts have not given a thing. Right? It's been proven cases where that's happened, and there are cases whereby it's a lottery. So you go to the board and you spent $5,000 on fixing the kitchen sink, and they give you $392.67.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they just look at it. Okay, so what did you do? Okay, what was the cost of that? Then you give them a receipt. It says, okay, you get that. That's it.
Yeah.
But no damages,
and again,
no issues that you had to go without a sink for 6 weeks.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that is about how the claim is structured.
Yeah, you have to be really careful. And this is why a lot of people, when they say, well, I could do my claim myself, and how to do that. And 99% of the time when people do it themselves, they leave things out. They miss things or they misinterpret things.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, there is a cap here in Canada on the non-pecuniary damages, they will basically, you can, generally speaking, you can get what you can prove. There are one or two instances, for example, at the Landlord and Tenant Board, you could get a year's worth of rent if you were illegally evicted in an N12 by an N12 or N13 or something that looks like an N12 or N13.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And then it shows that you can prove that it was bad faith.
Yeah.
Let's say, for instance, someone says they're going to be moving into the unit because they need it, and then you move out because of it, and it turns out they just re-rent it or they sell the place.
Yeah, and they re-rent it to, hey, I'm giving it to my mother, who's 77. Is the evidence that you give, and then they rent it to a 22-year-old student.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Really looks like your mother.
That's not your mother.
We had that where somebody was supposed to be their parents, but wasn't even the same nationality.
Yes, exactly. And that is actually one of these sort of things. So I always say to a tenant in that situation, keep looking back.
Yep, keep an eye on that unit. If
keep an eye on the unit.
Move out, or if the board ordered you to move out, just keep an eye on the unit. And see what happens.
Yeah. All right. So as I said, the situation here is the Supreme Court in this case of Andrews and Grandin Toy, which is essentially the one that rules in Canada for the framework for personal injury damages, has emphasized compensation rather than windfall. Right. So whilst compensations can be quite large, and we talked about these structured settlements that may even run into the millions, they allow you to live out the rest of your life through that compensation settlement. And the way that these settlements are structured is that you are buying into a growth fund for a period of time. You're always actually a member of a growth fund for some of these settlements anyway, because you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe even millions of dollars.
Then you'll get somebody to do an investment, right? And then you take out payments, annuities.
Yeah, and basically, once you've bought the house or whatever, you've now got a fund that pays off so many thousand a year, dependent upon what your needs are. And for example, if you are a paraplegic, maybe you need every 20 years you need a brand new wheelchair, latest technology on wheelchair. That is all included within the structured settlement. So that's why the modern framework for personal injury damages has emphasized that it's principle based upon compensation, right? Compensate the people for what they've lost rather than provide a windfall.
Yeah.
Right? And, and that's the way that these structured settlements are all put into place. So generally speaking, whilst you might get a situation whereby there's some punitive damages available, they're generally given in exceptional circumstances.
Yeah, or there's high-handed behavior on the part of the defendant.
Yeah, exactly. I had a situation earlier in the year where the judge gave me punitive damages in the small claims court for an amount of about $7,000 because of the non-responsiveness of the defendant.
Yeah. I had punitive damages of $5,000 in an employment case in small claims.
Yeah.
Because of the way that the employee was treated when she was taken out of the building when she was being terminated.
Because she was frog marched out as if she committed a crime.
Yeah, exactly. She was frog marched by security.
Yeah, exactly. I get that kind of situation, and it's exceptional circumstances that punitive damages are applied for. As I say, you've gotten it once, I've gotten it once. In fact, I probably asked, probably 90% of all cases I asked for it.
Yeah, I've asked from them too,
Yeah,
but you have to show the high-handedness of the behavior while you're asking that, okay, so the
yeah,
judge can consider them, okay? They don't hardly award punitive damages in the landlord-tenant board. Although I've seen tenants
well,
try to sue landlords and they represent themselves and they go against the landlords and they
yeah.
ask for punitive damages.
There's
And
been one case that I've seen where Maya and Cargini damages have amounted to 15,000.
yeah, but that's a different type of damages. Okay?
Yeah,
That's more like pain and suffering
yeah,
award. Yeah.
yeah, and again, that's exceptional. That's the most you're going to get. Other than a structured settlement based upon the wrongdoing that was done to a tenant, um, you're not going to get you're not going to get a settlement of $50,000 for anything in the landlord and tenant board, really, are you?
Nope. Nope.
Right. Um,
In fact,
it's
they're very hesitant to do that because that's the limit. And you have to
Yeah,
look at cases at a range, and they don't want to give $50,000 just to everybody who asks for it.
and they're certainly not going to give you Maya and Cargini damages at $50,000.
Yeah, unless you can show that there's something like
Yeah,
he
there
had a
was.
tenant who was assaulted who should have actually got $10,000 at least,
Yeah.
maybe more. But unfortunately, they give
Well,
them up.
that was the circumstance. It wasn't my case; it was another case. And she said, I'm." The adjudicator basically said, "I am mindful in this particular case," and didn't hear the whole award. But I'm mindful in this particular case to give Maya and Cargini damages in the region of $10,000 to $15,000 because of what the tenant suffered in respect to the situation.
Hmm.
And unless you, the landlord representative that was said to the individual in the court, can prove otherwise.
Yep, exactly.
And
As
the landlord
even
or
though a
their
lot of them, they will prove that, well, like they have to prove that, first of all, that an assault had taken place
yeah,
and maybe have I guess, a medical report or a police report,
yeah,
and stuff like that, and then, but it doesn't often happen where a landlord actually would assault a person,
no.
but it
and
does
and that
happen.
was and that was the case in point in that particular one. That was an assault by the landlord against an individual, and there was a substantial award given, quite rightly so. Right?
Yeah,
And it's not punitive damages; it's general damages,
yeah,
as you say.
it's like if you,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like you get injured in a car accident. There's pain and
yeah,
suffering
yeah,
damages you can get. Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely. All right. So I hope for everybody that's been an interesting tour around litigation and the fact that realistically you can't file for dollars anymore. Well, you never could in Canada, really, could you?
Hmm. Although
Right?
there's still a general population of people who do try.
Well, I think that there's a lot of people who have seen those exceptional American cases and try to think they're going to happen here.
Yeah, the same ones who ask for the Miranda rights here in Canada.
Yeah. Well, that's for sure. Okay, so let's pop this one up and let's wind this one down. And let's tell you. So, if you need Invictus Legal LLP, you can call us on 905 688 5598. Angela's email is angela@weareinvictus.legal. Mine is peter@weareinvictus.legal. And our website is weareinvictus.legal. Okay. And the other thing that's very important with all of these is to note the point that, and let me get rid of this. Note the point that.
Yeah. So what we heard today on Spin Legal, whether it's on this show or any other shows in the series, this is not legal advice. If you need specific legal advice, then please contact a paralegal or a lawyer. We'd love you to come to Invictus, but however, talk to a paralegal or a lawyer before you assume that you have a case when you may not.
Yeah. Okay. All
Yep.
right. And by the way, I forgot to say this at the beginning of the show, but happy Canada Day because tomorrow is Canada Day 2026. So
Yep.
happy Canada Day, listeners, and we will see you sometime soon. All right,
Yep.
and
Don't drink and drive.
certainly not. But do enjoy yourself on Canada
Yeah,
Day.
but do enjoy yourself. There's lots of festivities around the city and places, freebies up in the parks. Fireman's Park in Niagara Falls, Montebello Park in St. Catharines, and Reddy Park later on. The fireworks, Victoria Park for Niagara Falls. There's lots of different things going on, so just go out and see. I won't be out there; it's too hot.
Well, actually, did you go out today? It's
Nope,
40. It feels like
nope.
40 out there.
I have to be careful because
Yeah.
the heat actually aggravates this thing.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate, and well, you
Otherwise,
stay
I would
safe.
enjoy it because I would enjoy Montebello Park to see what that's like.
Yeah.
But I can't
Well,
this year.
yeah. Okay. Well, you stay safe, and everybody else stay safe, and
Yep.
we will see you in a week's time with a new episode of Spin Legal. All right.
Yep.